Hi guys, so since I couldn't be with you to finish reading the story in class today, I'm going to read it to you on the video, and so you can open the chapter 6 through 8 document that's attached to today's assignment in Google Classroom, so September 18th, and then follow along as I read the story to you. So we're in chapter 6, and yesterday we just read about how Pete's arm wasn't set right the first time. So they had to go back to the doctor and they had to reset it, sort of like re-breaking it to set it right in the cast. So Jack felt really bad that he had to go through this because it's painful. So he actually offered him his own arm if his didn't heal. So that was really sweet. So now we're going to find out what happens at the end of the story. So we're reading the last 3 chapters. Chapter 6. All week long, I minded my own business. When Pete asked if I wanted to sign his new cast, I refused. I didn't want to get near him. I spent my time trying to train Bobo to be a human. I slipped a t-shirt over his head and put his paws through the armholes. And I changed his name to Eric. I thought I might ride down to the Salvation Army store and buy some used baby shoes and put them on his paws. But I was bored. I knew I shouldn't, but a few days later I drifted over to the pagodas. There just wasn't anything else to do at our house, and they always knew how to have fun. Before I left our house, I poured Dad's Old Spice aftershave over my left hand. "Come in," hollered Mr. Pagoda after I knocked. I took a deep breath of air and opened the door. The smell was like sticking your head in a toilet. I held my perfumed hand to my face just about each time I took a breath. Mr. Pagoda was stirring a big pot of thick yellow goop on the stove. It boiled up and spit out of the pot like a volcano. He jumped back and shielded his eyes. "What are you making?" I asked. "Experimenting with banana skins," he grunted, as he again stirred the hissing pot. "Everyone throws them away. If I can make something useful out of them, I'll make a fortune. Right now, I'm making a banana skin shoe repair kit in a can. When you get a hole in the bottom of your shoe, you just spray this stuff on and keep walking. What do you think?" Just then, the pot erupted and a wad of banana shoe glue hit the ceiling. It looked like it was stuck up there for life. Where's Frankie?" I asked, looking around. "Out back, I think." I nearly ran for the back door. "Air! I need air!" I gasped. Frankie was hanging conch shells on the clothesline. Conches are hard to pull out of their shells, so he was reaching into them with a pair of pliers, grabbing the long, skinny foot of the conch and pinning that part over the clothesline. "This way," Frankie explained. "The heavy shell will make the conch really tired, and soon the shell will drop to the ground." "But they're already dead," I said. "They stink." The pagodas were like a picture book family I once read called The Stupids Step Out. Everyone knows that if you want to remove a conch from its shell, you just drop it in boiling water and it comes right out. "Why don't you do it that way?" I asked Frankie. "Dad says it boils the color out of the shells and he wants to sell them to tourists." "I thought you were going to eat the conch." "No way, they're like chewing on dog toys." He finished pinning up the last one. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I have a great idea," he said. "I've been thinking about it all morning." We went around to the swing set on the far side of his house where my mom couldn't see us. He held up an old hula hoop that he had wrapped in gauze bandages. "It's a daredevil game I saw on TV. I'll get on my skateboard and ride it down the slide. You squirt lighter fluid on the gauze and set it on fire, and I'll fly through it. Susie has a Polaroid camera, and she'll take pictures, and we can send them into the TV program and see if we can get on the show. How do I hold a burning hula hoop? With this." He tossed me an oven mitt. "Are you sure this will work?" "Don't know until you try it, my dad always says." Well, I know what my dad would say. "Wait here," Frankie said. "I'll go get Susie." It would be neat, I thought, to see a picture of myself flying through a burning hoop on a skateboard. I'll show it to the kids at school. No one could top it. Just then, Pete spotted me and ran over. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing that concerns you," I said sharply. "Allowance for life," he whined. "You said so." "It might be a short life." Frankie and Susie joined us. "Okay," announced Frankie. "I'll go first." Suddenly, I could see this leading to trouble. People want to try it, and he'll go up in flames, and Dad will build a real electric chair just for me. We have to go, I said to Frankie. Come on, Pete. I grabbed his good arm and jerked him away. Where are we going? He asked. To a quiet, safe place, I replied. Chapter 7. That evening, when we sat down at the dinner table, I felt proud of myself for keeping Pete alive. I knew I couldn't tell Dad how I had used good judgment because he would go berserk when I told him Frankie planned to skateboard through a flaming hula hoop. Mom dished out the corned beef and cabbage, and Betsy passed out spoons. What is that foul smell? Dad asked, wrinkling up his face. What's rotting? Calm down. It's just boiled cabbage, Mom said. I can't calm down with that smell coming in the windows. What is that stench? He held his napkin over his nose. I knew where that smell was coming from, but I refused to say. It's the conch meat, Pete shouted and pointed. From our kitchen windows, we could see the fly-covered bodies of the conches that Frankie had left pinned to the line after the shells had slipped off. These people are disgusting, Dad griped. I can't wait until we move out of this neighborhood full of loonies. Me too, Betsy added. Did you hear that Gary Pagoda stole another car and was caught in Miami? Kid is a criminal, Dad replied. Ugh, how do they expect us to eat dinner with that stench in the air? It wasn't a question anyone wanted to answer. Jack, he said to me, go over there and tell those people to take down that garbage. Me? Why me? You, he said right back. You know them. They're your sick friends. Now go tell them they're smelling up the neighborhood. Scooted back in my chair. Okay, I said. I looked at Mom. She was no help. Betsy gave me her thin-lipped smile. Pete crossed his eyes at me. I knew what he was thinking. I took a garbage bag from the utility room and went directly to the pagoda's backyard. The conches looked like diseased chicken wings. One by one, I yanked them off the line as the flies and smell swirled around my head. I didn't have gloves, and the spongy meat squished between my fingers. Conch juice ran down my arm and dripped off my elbow. When I finished, I scrubbed my hands with Dad's lava soap to get rid of the smell. Good job, Dad said when I returned to the table. Go change your shirt, Mom said. It picked up the odor. I was pleased to go to my room. After pulling the conches off the line, I had lost my appetite. After dinner, Frankie knocked on my window. Hey, he said, my brother's back home from court. Do you want to watch him tattoo his arm? I can't, I said. Well, you're missing the best show in town, he said. See you later. After Frankie ran off, I couldn't sit still. I think it's time to go fishing, Eric, I said to Bobo. There was still plenty of light. He looked up at me and I read his mind. Yes, Jack, I would like to go fishing, he was thinking. I unlocked my door and quietly walked down the hall with my rod in one hand and the tackle box in the other. I didn't want Pete dragging along so he could drown and ruin my life. We went directly to a secret place behind Big Daddy's Liquors. A large water drainage pipe emptied into a canal. I sat on the rounded edge of the pipe and opened my tackle box. I took out my net and waded into the shallow water. A small rapids formed as the water broke over the sharp rocks that lined the canal as it passed under an old railroad bridge. I held my net in the running water, and in a few minutes, I had a small shiner. Piece of cake, I said. I gently slipped the hook into his mouth and out his gill. I dropped him in the water and slowly let out the line. The current carried the shiner about 10 yards downstream, a perfect location for a hungry snook. After 15 minutes, nothing happened. I figured my shiner was worn out. There was a 7-Eleven store next to Big Daddy's, and I had enough change for a small grape Slurpee. Stay, Eric, I ordered Bobo, and set my rod down on the pipe. And guard that with your life. He looked at me and then went back to sleep. Those were the last words I ever said to him. Chapter 8. Poor Bobo. I had taken about 10 steps when I heard him yelp. When our very first Bobo was hit by a car in front of our last house, he had yelped in exactly the same way. I spun around in time to see a large alligator clamp Bobo's head in its mouth and then drag him back down the bank. Bobo's legs kicked out at the ground, but the alligator held him tight as it quickly slithered backward down the bank and into the water. I was terrified of the alligator. It was at least 10 feet long, and I knew they were fast, sneaky fast. They caught a lot of dogs and sometimes got hold of a kid. I stood still for a minute, and I wasn't sure what to do. I ran back to the drainage pipe and leaned forward. Bobo! I yelled across the water. I looked up and down the canal, hoping that somehow he had wiggled free. Bobo! I hollered left and right. Bobo! He was gone. The water was black and smooth as it rushed by. I stepped from the pipe to the bank and to the spot where Bobo had slept. I stooped down to touch the dirt. I thought it might be warm. Half buried in the sand was the stupid watch I had earlier put on his arm. This could have been Pete, I thought. He would have listened to me if I told him to guard it with your life. He would have been on this exact spot with his back to the alligator. He would have been watching me walk away. He would have been begging me to buy him a Slurpee, and I would have been thinking, buy it yourself. And then he would have been ambushed and dragged back into the water and eaten. Dad was right. I shouldn't turn my back on Pete. I should keep an eye out for him. I'm the older brother, and it's up to me to help him. I shouldn't break his arm and let him knock his teeth out or punch him like I do. Suddenly, I thought, he might be at the pagodas getting a tattoo on his arm. I grabbed my rod and reeled in the line. Pete, I'm sorry, but wherever you are, stay put, I said to myself. I'm coming. I ran full speed with my tackle box in one hand and my reel in the other. I kept my eyes on the ground, picking the spot for each foot, making certain that I got the most of each step. I reached the backyard. Pete! I yelled as I dropped my tackle box and reel. I stuck my head through the open kitchen window. Mom was mixing a pitcher of frozen juice. Have you seen Pete? I asked. I was panting. I thought he was with you, she said. I took off running around the pagoda side of our house. I jumped the low hedge and made for the far side of their yard. There was Pete. He was kneeling on top of their slide and trying to get a skateboard lined up under him. Down below, Frankie held the lighter fluid-drenched hula hoop, and Susie stood to one side with her thumb on top of a cigarette lighter. They were ready to go up in flames. Pete! I yelled. Stop! I ran up to Frankie and yanked the hula hoop out of his hand and flung it as far as I could. Frankie gave me a shove from behind. I turned and got ready to jump him. He wanted to do it, Frankie shouted at me and stepped back. It was his idea, Susie said, pointing to Pete. That doesn't mean you should let him do it, I yelled. I looked up at Pete. Get down here. I have something terrible to tell you. He let the skateboard go down the slide and took the ladder. Bobo was eaten by an alligator. He looked up at me. Are you lying? He asked. No, I said. He was eaten by a 10-foot alligator that could just as easily have eaten you. Bobo had fleas, Pete said. I hate fleas. Don't you get it? I said. He was eaten by an alligator. I know what an alligator is, he said. And then he added, Bobo smelled bad. He was your dog, I yelled. He worshipped you. He ate my shoes, Pete said. Don't you get what I'm saying? I said. Get what? He said. No wonder I have to take care of you, I said. He stepped away from me. Do you want to see my tattoo? He asked. What? I hollered. What? Just kidding, he said and began to laugh. Give me your other arm, I demanded. He stuck it out and I dragged him all the way home. The end. Okay, so since you finished listening, go check for your assignment for today.